I haven't got many jokes. I'm looking at all the stuff on the right-hand side, but I'm going to get started again. Apologies that that's taken so long to set up. Hopefully, as we navigate this uncertain time with technology as well, we'll become better at all of this stuff. So, my name's Raoul Monks, founder and director of Flume Sales Training. And I want to just begin this by saying a huge, huge thank you to the unprecedented support we've had for this initiative of webinars that we're putting on. This is the first of 3, but we're actually committing every Wednesday to try and do one of these on different areas to help you guys navigate this really tough time. And I also want to just draw attention to a few organizations that have massively helped us put this out there and also supported us. So in no particular order, the AEO have been hugely behind this and so supportive of trying to help salespeople navigate this tough time, as of the PPA, and also those great people over at Mash Media and Confex and Exhibition News who have done everything they can to get this message out. I want to put a few things out there to the group just before we get started. So, number one, I am so overwhelmingly aware, as is everyone at Flume Sales Training, that this is such a sensitive time for everyone. And I'm going to try and be as sensitive as I can as we go through. And if I use any words that in any way offend, so I might talk about opportunities and things like that, I'm absolutely with the best intentions trying to do the right thing here. And I also know for some of you, there's far more important stuff going on outside of work. So my thoughts and feelings go out to everyone who's in a tough situation. I want to take you briefly around the tech on this. Some of you might not have used this before. We're quite new to it. We had a webinar this morning, which went really well. I didn't run it, which is probably why. And there's some great opportunities for you guys to get engaged and involved. And if you look on the right-hand side, as you guys are already getting used to, you can talk as much as you want as you go through. Richard Miles and Paul Cruz, and also Nicola Miles, who's part of the team, will be engaging with you guys as they go through, giving you links and ideas. But please give your thoughts and comments as we're going through this. Also, if we look at the very bottom, there's a bit that says ask a question. There's already 22. We've only got an hour and a half. But if you go into that and click on it, you'll see lots of different questions. You can put your own in there, but also you can mark the questions up. So if there's ones you think you really want the answer to, then I will do my best at the end of this to try and answer them. But again, we've got an hour and a half today. The good news with the questions and also the polls, so you'll see down there, there's polls I'd love all of you to get engaged with, because what that's going to allow us to do at Flume is to really try and deliver on our promise of helping you guys after this as well. So although we've only got an hour and a half today, we've got a LinkedIn group which is called Media and Events Selling in a Crisis, which if you're not already there, there's nearly 700 members I think already in the last week, which is just crazy and brilliant, and really shines a light on this calls. We're going to try and answer the questions after in there as well and write blogs around them. So the more engaged you can get in to this today, the more value you're going to get. The more you can share, the more you'll get back. The final thing to say just before I move on to the actual presentation and webinar is that we've also written a white paper about what we're going to go through here. So if you want a version of that after today, then you can email info@flumetraining.com, and all we ask you is that you just write on there any other areas you want to find out about, things you want us to talk about in the future, people you want us to get involved with this who can give you ideas as well. So just email info@flumetraining with what you want us to talk about. If you've got any feedback on this event as well, then great, and we'll ping through to you a usable white paper to help you back in, I was going to say your workplaces, but back at home. So we're going to dive in. I will slow down so it can't see the slides. Okay, bear with me a second. Let me see if I can get those slides to work. I'm just going to come out and go back in. Technology is a lovely thing. Can you tell me if you can see the slides? Can anyone see the slides? Frozen. Can't see the slides. Victoria, you can see the slides. Keep stopping. Yeah, all good. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. There's enough yeses there, I think, to move on. Okay. So we've got about an hour and a half. I'll try and tackle as many questions as I can at the end. We're going to dive in. So just a brief bit about Flume sales training. So up until 3 weeks ago, we were having the best year of our life working with media events companies and seeing real results from the training we were doing in-house. And as I'm sure all of you have been through, everything fell off or turned around within about one night. And we've had to completely relook at what we're doing. And our purpose now is 100% to try and help media and event sales professionals to navigate this time and come out in as strong a position with your clients as possible. And we're trying to do everything we possibly can to help people get through this time. So please use us as much as you can in this time. In this presentation and webinar, I'm going to take you through 3 main areas, and it is worth writing some of this down, taking notes and thinking about yourself and what your clients are going through and what you want to use after this, because this is designed to help you guys go away literally after this and use it. So 3 main areas we're going to look at. Number 1, we're going to look at what your clients are going through. We're going to spin you into their head and get you thinking from their perspective. One of the big things we always say at Flume sales training is the biggest mistake sales teams make is to look at everything from their own perspective and not the clients. And one of the themes today is the exaggeration of the importance of the sales experience on that client. So we're going to get into the client's head and think, what are they going through, to allow us to think, what do we need to do to make it easier for them to want to work with us? The next thing we're going to do is shine a light on some of the biggest mistakes that I'm sure you're not making, but you could make. And we've already come across some of these at Flume with people trying to sell to us. And there's a massively sensitive emotional response from clients at the moment to sales approaches. And they're either looking at people as friends or foes. And we're going to look at the mistakes you could be making and how to avoid those. And what that's going to give us, and this is the biggest thing you can take away from today, is the rules to follow afterwards. So we're going to give you, towards the back end of this webinar, 3 rules for sales strategy and how to position your product, but also 3 rules for sales behavior based on what your clients need today. For the record, so we're all aware of this, next week we're running a webinar on leading and driving remote sales teams. And the webinar after that, the following Wednesday, is the pivot to digital from events. So if you're having to now sell virtual events or digital events, we're going to dive into that. So in terms of the sort of questions, I'll just a quick message from someone. It says, Raoul, can you ask people to stop using the chat, please? It will help the tech side of things. So I want you guys to get engaged, but probably the best place to get engaged is with the questions at the bottom, I think. So not trying to stop chatter, but it might be blurring or slowing down some people's reception, just so you know. I've just been told that. So what we're going to do is I'll be sharing with you today stuff around selling in a crisis, next time around leading and driving remote sales teams, and the one after that is around a pivot to digital. So questions I'll look at today around selling in the crisis, and I'll try and cover as much as I can. So I'm going to go through. Some people are saying that it's stuck for them, it's freezing a lot. Hopefully I'll go through the slide deck slow enough, so even if it's free, stop spamming and listen, someone said. Even if it's freezing, you'll be able to kind of follow the slide deck. So I'm going to keep going and carry on, okay? So let's just first off look at this idea of looking at things from a client's perspective. And the first bit we'll actually look at here is the way that a lot of salespeople will naturally respond to this crisis. And says, I think host can, I'm going to try and ignore the bits on the right for a second because there's so much happening. So what we're going to look at first is how a lot of the salespeople actually respond to this crisis. And we're going to really exaggerate this. And I'm sure you won't be in just one of these camps, but it's worth thinking about your teams. And if you're a sales leader, what they're doing and the approaches they're using, then we're going to hold it up against a lens of your clients and look at what's working and what's not. There's a bit here that says everyone put it on 360. Apparently that works better, I think. So the first approach a salesperson could take is to become passive. And I think this is quite typical because a lot of salespeople feel like they don't want to bother or upset clients, and it's inappropriate to have sales conversations with them right now. So we shy away from all of this. The second approach is, and it's probably the wrong word in this environment, but a more aggressive approach, and one where we are driven by security and wanting to make sure we're keeping our job, but also driven by the targets we might be given. And at the moment, as we'll see, clients aren't really wanting to hear a sales pitch, but that doesn't mean there aren't ways that we can still work with them. Ultimately, from a client's perspective, again, as we'll see, neither a passive or aggressive approach is really going to help them in any way. And again, a big theme today is around helping your clients to navigate this really tough time. So we're going to step into the shoes of the client, and it's worth really thinking about this. Our biggest thing at Flume is to shift perspective for the sales teams into that of today's buyer. And we've got so much research around the way that buyers buy, but based on the crisis now, so much of it is going to be exaggerated. And I just want to shine a light off that or on that to allow you to have a think about what your client's going through and what's going to make it easier for them to want to work with you. So this, in theory, is your client. Let's, for the sake of this, we'll call her Joanna, and she's a marketing director. Now, the first piece here, what's changed for her is this feeling of being scared. So what we're talking about here is motivation. Now, a lot of you will have seen this before. We say here motivation from ego to security. Now, you'll see here Maslow's hierarchy of needs. A lot of you would have seen this. Has been there for years and years and years, quite old school. But what's interesting in terms of motivation and what drives her is she might well have been 3 weeks ago in a place of ego or esteem. But now the motivation or the driver for her has dropped down because of what's happening in the uncertainty to a place of security or even the one below. And so for her and any of your clients, it's become more scary for all of them. And the motivation has moved from ego to security. So they're very much in this fight or flight mode where they're looking for friend or foe and everything's exaggerated. What this also means is that they're becoming more focused on themselves than ever. So if you look at the research from Gartner about 3 years ago, before all of this happened, there was a ton of research into the significance of talking and connecting to your client personally in their role and how much more likely it was that they would put you into consideration stage, work with you, buy from you, advocate for you, pay a premium. That's going to be exaggerated as well, because what she's going to be worrying about is herself and her situation and focusing very much on her role and her security. So connecting personally to these people and your clients is so important. And that isn't just in terms of the relationship outside of work. That's also about them in their role. Now, the other impact of this is that because everything's changing every single day for your client, they will be more focused on the day-to-day, and they'll find it very difficult to look into the future, to have any certainty. So they won't be able to see the wood for the trees because literally overnight things are changing for them. And on top of that, there's heightened emotions. And I think this is a massive one, which is that they are going to be so emotionally volatile to a good approach from a salesperson and the client relationship that the salesperson's trying to drive, or a negative one. And it's going to be long lasting. They're going to remember this stuff more than ever. So the importance, as we'll see in a minute, of a strong sales approach or strong client relationship is so exaggerated compared to the negative impact of a bad sales approach. So for her, she's going to be paying far more attention, have far more of an antenna out for this in terms of, are you trying to help her or are you just trying to sell at her? And for her, traditional metrics have gone out the window. So what she was measuring 3 weeks ago, their determination of success has completely changed. Now, as a summary, thinking about it from the client's perspective, things are so different. They're going through the same panic, confusion as many of us are, and they're thinking day by day, and they're becoming emotionally reactive and frustrated for people who are selling at them, but also very, very open to people who genuinely want to help them. Because in these times, people want to come together and work as a team, but they need to make sure that the people they're working with are doing things for the right reasons. So things have very much changed for your client. And ultimately, your clients are going to be asking themselves one thing only, which is, how the hell are we going to do this? How are we going to get through this? What the hell are we going to do? And that's the question that they want help with. And they will be connecting with people who can genuinely help them answer that question or navigate through to come out of this in as strong a position as possible. For your client, that's all they care about. So what this means is, in terms of the sales approach, it's become more important than ever. And when I talk about sales approach, I'm talking about the growing the client relationship, becoming connected with that client and working as a team. So if we go 3, 4, 5 weeks back or 5 months back, before all of this happened, there was an amazing stat, which is that in normal circumstances, the reason a client would choose one salesperson over another or one solution over another is because of the sales experience. 53% of why they'd choose is the sales experience. So 19% was brand, 19% was product and service, and only 9% was down to price. 53% was down to the sales experience. That, and I can't push this enough, is going to be more exaggerated than ever. It's going to be wildly exaggerated because they're going to be thinking about, are you selling to me or are you trying to help me? So they're going to be looking out for this more than ever. So making sure you as a sales team are operating in the right way for the client is going to have the most dramatic impact, positively or negatively at the moment from their perspective. So I'm going to move on to mistakes to avoid. And it's worth, when I go through this, having a think, have you made any of these? But also think about it from the client's perspective. Why are they mistakes? And have you been on the end of this? Because these really that we're sharing with you here are based on what we've seen salespeople try and do with us, and also what working with a lot of media and event sales teams, even in the last 2-3 weeks, we've seen them do. And there's a lot of things that you can avoid, and that gives us rules moving forward. So number one, what not to do from the client's perspective. So number one is generic emails and calls. At the moment, as I mentioned before, Joanna, your client, will be more focused on themselves than ever. And receiving blanket emails, receiving blanket LinkedIn messages, receiving generic calls over the phone, which does not make them feel special or make them feel personal in any way, absolutely clients are going to be pushing back with this type of stuff. So we need to be making sure that we are personally connecting to these people and doing our homework before and making sure they know that they've been chosen, because they're going to spend time with people who they feel have actually chosen them, not just blankets. So we need to make sure they don't feel like a number, but they feel like you see them as a person and that you care. Next, this idea of being product-led. So this might sound a bit harsh, but at the moment, your clients don't care about your products. They care about themselves. They care about keeping their job. They care about the problems they've got. They care about how to navigate through this, what they do, how to make safe decisions. And none of that involves the product. All they want from anyone they're going to connect with is help. They want to learn how to move forward with this. So going in product-led and talking about these great creations we've come up with over the last couple of weeks to help them doesn't necessarily work. We need to be making sure we're making all of this about them. The next one, again, is quite obvious, but we've got a lot of emails, especially through LinkedIn and through generic email systems that have come to us, and they're very inauthentic. You know that the salesperson is not doing stuff for the right reasons. They're not doing stuff to help the clients. They're doing stuff to help themselves. And that will come across more than ever in this environment for your client. Salesy, to a degree, needs to go out the window, and we need to think about helping. So the other one is assuming that the same things are going to be important to the client now as they were 3-4 weeks ago. I've seen a lot of emails going out saying, which are your priorities? And they're offensive because they talk about the priorities that were there 3-4 weeks ago. They don't acknowledge in any way what that client's going through. So we need to make sure we're acknowledging that their goals have changed. Everything's changed for them. And the other one is to just focus on the short term. We need to be really careful about this, because if you think about it from a client's perspective, by talking about what they can buy now and what they can do now, it in a way paralyzes them in terms of being able to act. For someone to make a decision about something they're frozen on right now, we need to push the horizon back and get them thinking about, how do they want to come through this? What do they want to be known for after this? And how can we help them do that? And by pushing that horizon back, it allows them to have a bit more confidence and certainty about what they need to do to get there. By setting that goal, it allows them to look at their reality now and think about what they need to do to see that light at the end of the tunnel. So lots and lots of different mistakes here that salespeople can make, and you might not make any of these, you might have fallen into the trap, but they're worth having on your radar to make sure when you put out your next email, LinkedIn message, or virtual call that you're not falling into these traps. Ultimately, there's another one there actually, which is not staying in contact at all. So the top ones there are more around kind of a more aggressive approach. The bottom one there is backing away from the conversation itself and becoming passive. And again, that doesn't help a client either, because they're just not hearing from you, not adding anything. So in terms of mistakes to avoid, we need to be very careful, and we need to make sure that as an industry, which is what we are, we need to shift the client's perspective of what a salesperson is and what they do. Because as long as the industry sees us as salespeople, they're not going to see what value we can really add. And there is so much value you can add to clients right now to really strengthen and drive the relationship. So we need to shift how we and the industry view what we're doing. So this is called Sales Redefined, and it's a really easy concept, this is, guys. So I don't mean to patronize at all, but it's just worth having a common language here, because I'm just going to show you an easy way to think about sales. And then we're going to, in a moment, move on to these tips and processes we're going to introduce to help you really think about your proposition and also think about the behaviors you can demonstrate to help your client want to work with you through this time. So very basically, if we think about any form of sales, there's three things that make up a sales process, or a buying process is a better way of thinking about it. So number one, your client, with anything you're ever selling, has to have a challenge they need to solve. And what that does is it creates a need. And what that does is it means you can solve it with a solution. But the interesting thing when we look at that is that is the exact same model as something else that we do every single day for other people outside of work. If you're providing a solution for someone, it means you're solving a problem or a challenge. And that's exactly the same process as helping someone, helping clients. That's all we're doing. We're helping clients. And a lot of salespeople know that. Some salespeople don't realize that. And a lot of clients don't know that. And at the moment, we need to absolutely focus everything we can on helping our clients come out of the back of this in as strong a position as possible. And we need to re-engineer or refocus our sales efforts away kind of from sales and thinking, how do we help? Because that in itself will lead to a stronger relationship and outcome for both you and them from this really tough situation. So it's time to do everything you can to help your client come through this in as strong a position as possible. What I'm going to do here, I don't know if that's for me. There's some messages on the right. I'm hoping that's for someone else. I'm going to keep on going unless someone tells me not to. I'm hoping you guys can hear me and this is kind of working okay for the majority. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share with you some tips and processes. And the first process I'm going to share with you is actually around defining your product in a way that means you can message to your clients and have a conversation with your clients in the right way. And I want to share this with you because it's been so pivotal at Flume to allow us to get here with you guys now. We went through this exact process and we came up with it about 2 weeks ago around a drawing board and thinking, what do we do? How do we move forward? And we want to share that with all of you guys because I really think it can make a massive, massive difference to you and your sales teams if you go away and focus on what we're about to tell you. I'm then going to share with you some behaviors that you guys can start demonstrating to your clients and kind of live by. So the first bit is 3-step strategic process for navigating the crisis. Let me tell you a brief story. So 3 weeks ago, I told you this before this part, but we were having a great year and then everything fell off a cliff overnight. We went through panic. We thought, what are we going to do? People aren't necessarily going to be prioritizing sales training that we've done before because everything's changed for them. And after 2 or 3 days of panic, we came together as a team and we thought, we've got to go back to basics. We've got to go back to why we exist. Now at Flume, we've always known our existence was to try and drive and prove sales results from our sales training. And we've been having amazing impact with that, but we had to reposition. We had to reposition our cause, our purpose, our pure reason for existence. And we've repositioned that to the focus and purpose that we know clients, you guys, potential clients, the industry going to care about? Because we've got to make sure that to get through this, you have to get through it. So our purpose around that drawing board became to make sure we can help the sales industry, B2B sales industry, media and events navigate this tough time and come out in as strong a position as possible. And by defining that purpose, it allowed us to do so much more, which I'll share with you in a second. But for you guys, it's where you guys need to focus as well, in my opinion, to make sure you can strengthen and bring together that sales team with a purpose your client's going to care about. So making sure that you're having conversations with your team and thinking, why should we exist now? What is your cause? What is the cause that your clients are going to care about? Because they're going to be looking at friend or foe. They're going to be looking at who's here to help. And by being able to clearly articulate your purpose and cause, your why, Simon Sinek, why do you exist? And focusing that on stuff they can care about, it allows you to start creating and coming up with approaches that are going to work for your client. So stage one is thinking about, what is your purpose? Why do you exist? My gut here, guys, but I don't want to tell you what your purpose should be, but your purpose might be the same as ours, which is, we know the only way we're going to get through this is to help our industry get through this. So there is something to say that for the majority of you as sales teams, your focus could be, or your purpose could be, or your cause could be to make sure that we're helping our clients to navigate this difficult time and come out the back of it in a stronger position as possible. Now, I'm not saying that is it, but it could be, and that is ours. And what that allowed us to do, and what it could allow you to do, is go to the next part of the 3-step strategic process, which is to brainstorm, how can you help your client in the best way right now? So if your cause, like ours, was to make sure the industry comes out of this in as strong a position as possible, then that allowed us to think, well, how can we help? And we realized there's 3 main ways that we can help right now that we know about. And one is helping people on selling in a crisis like this. 2 is, unsurprisingly, the next webinar, which is selling, driving and managing remote teams. And the 3rd is pivoting to digital. And we knew we had a lot to share around that, but we only realized that was important once we realized what our purpose was. So defining the purpose allowed you to work out, how can you help people? And what that allowed us to do, and you've got lots of questions there you can ask yourselves or your teams. What that allowed us to do is to, again, really shift your perspective and start thinking, what approaches can we offer? Like, what's going to help you guys? What's going to help you guys around those 3 areas? And that's why suddenly we've become completely on top of LinkedIn. We've created these webinars. We've created a YouTube channel last weekend. I decided just to work all weekend and I did a YouTube channel. I've never done that before. But all of that came out of realizing we needed to help people do that. But we've also created modules off of the back of this webinar, which people can get more involved in and bring into their business so we can personalize it. We've created public courses around those modules. And we've also refocused the original modules we used to do through the lens of the crisis. But all of this has come from that one purpose, which is to help the industry come out of this in as strong a place as possible. And what I'm trying to recommend to you is not that you have to have the same purpose as us. That's not the point. But to bring your team together, to bring you and your clients together, and to allow you to be seen as a friend and someone who's going to help them through this and they want to have conversations with and a relationship with. They need to believe why you're in their life. So getting together as a team and thinking, why do we exist? What's the only thing a client's going to care about? And how do we help them do that? And then what can we create to help drive those impacts? Will allow you as a team to really, really focus in on the client's world and connect with them in a way like we may have never done before. But it's absolutely what a client needs now, because the sales approach has never been as exaggerated as it's going to have the exaggeration now in terms of the impact it's going to have on clients positively or negatively. They need to believe for the right reasons that you're there. So hopefully that's useful in terms of a strategic positioning. And the reason we've put this in this webinar, because I could have just gone straight into sales behaviors, is because what we've learned over the 11 years at Flume Sales Training is without the right message, without the right purpose, the right calls, sales teams can be the best salespeople ever. But if your client doesn't buy into why you exist, then it's going to be very difficult to sell to them. And today, that's even more important. So getting that message right is absolutely crucial. So we're going to move on to the next part here, which is the sales behaviors. that you guys can demonstrate. So someone said, hi, Raoul, would you please move the cursor from the middle of the slide? It would be very helpful. Massive apologies, guys. I didn't know the cursor was possible to see. Laura, can you see that now? I'm taking a silence as a yes. So we're going to move on to the sales behaviors that you guys can potentially demonstrate and focus all of your efforts around. And we are putting on courses around this moving forward, which there'll be free webinars next Wednesday, the Wednesday after. But these 3 areas I'm about to go into are areas that we're going to allow you to kind of dive into if you want to get involved in more webinars and training moving forward. So let me take you through the behaviors. So these sales behaviors that we've come up with here, they're the ones that we use now, and they're more laser focused than ever, but they're designed to help you and your client come out of this in as strong a position as possible. So they're kind of designed based on that assumption that your purpose might be something similar to ours, but we think there's something in here. And I want to share with you, I'm going to tell you some behaviors, but I'm going to give you some tips as well. So if you want to scribble them, please do. Some of these might be obvious, guys, so I'm not trying to patronize, but I will try and give you as much as I can in this to help you guys instantly go away and use some new ideas with your clients, okay? So the first one, there's a lot on this about on YouTube and on LinkedIn. Stu Pringle's done a brilliant piece on this, worth following him on LinkedIn. He's got some great ideas around this. And it is one of the most important pieces, which is this idea of being empathetic. So I know it sounds very obvious, but back to Joanne, who we talked about before, who's more focused on herself than ever before and more in security mode and thinking friend or foe and thinking, should I have this conversation is going to help me or not? Being able to tap into what she's going through has never been more important. She's never been more emotionally responsive as she is now, and she'll be looking for people she can trust. So being empathetic is absolutely crucial, and acknowledging what she's going through and that things have changed is incredibly important too. So I'm going to give you a couple of tips as to how you can do this. And again, in the modules we're running, we'll be doing more on this sort of stuff and additional things, but be empathetic. So one thing you can do is this idea of client personas. Now, a lot of you probably already work off client personas. And what we recommend here is to either build new ones or to rebuild and improve or change the ones you've been working on, because the world your client's going through has changed. Everything they're going through has changed. They're going to be caring about different things. The metrics they're going to be measuring and what good looks like has changed. So sitting down with your teams as an exercise, maybe tomorrow morning, and thinking, let's just build 3 or 4 personas based on the main people that we normally work with, and think, what are they going through? What's changed for them? What do they care about? What language are they going to use in terms of the challenges they're facing? What are they thinking about? And the brilliant thing with client personas, if you simplify them to what's their average day look like? Sorry, there's a note come through about first touch. I'll come to that in a minute. So if you can build these personas, then it's going to allow you to connect with them in a much better way using the language they would use. I would recommend a persona which literally says what's happening in their day at the moment, and then what results and outcomes they care about, and what are the main challenges they're making. But the more, but as simple as that. But what I would recommend is every single time that you're speaking to a new client, make sure that you're building this, and you're building, and we'll come to this idea of being valuable later. You're building these stories. You're building this almost encyclopedia of knowledge about people in their role, allowing you to teach people. But you can start building out real ones and real experiences. And that can be massively important in terms of you connecting and really, as we'll see in a minute, adding value to that conversation. The other piece here, which is pretty simple, I think, but it's one of the, I suppose, toughest things for a lot of salespeople, even in a good time, but it's become more exaggerated today than ever before because of what your client's gone through, is this idea of acknowledging what your client's going through, not just assuming everything's the same as it was before, because it isn't. I mean, we've got to be open about the fact that things have changed and acknowledge how they're feeling and what they're probably going through. But this idea of listening, and you've probably been on tons of sales training courses where they say 2 ears and 1 mouth. it's a bit weird, but it's kind of 3 years in one mouth now. It really is giving the client the opportunity to talk and feel heard and feel understood, because that's what they need. So we need to stop talking about us and encourage them to talk about them, and then team up with them and say, we're here for you. So being empathetic is incredibly important, tapping into what they're going through with buying personas, but also tapping into acknowledging what they're going through and really listening so they know you care has never been more important. I'm going to move on to the second behavior, and you'll probably notice as I go through these that there's a bit of an order to these. So the first one we need to be is empathetic. We need to have that the whole time, but show empathy, show you understand their world, acknowledge what they're going through. The second step is around being purposeful. So I mentioned before in the kind of strategy bit just now that working out your purpose has never been more important, but stating your purpose in your client's world, the reason you exist, is crucial, because the moment you contact them, they'll be thinking, can I trust this person? Is this person credible? Are they going to help me or not? Now, being purposeful means you need to know why you're doing what you do. So the recommendations are here that you need to know your calls. You need to be able to verbalize that and articulate that clearly. And you need to make sure your client knows that up front. Make sure that your client is very aware of why you exist in their life, because they will be, if you don't state that, looking to work that out very quickly, and their antennae will be out. The next piece here, which I think is really important, is if you've got a purpose, you know where you're looking to get to and you know what you're looking to do. And I think that one of the things we mentioned before about Joanne is she's likely, not always, but likely to potentially be looking at things day by day and almost paralyzed in some cases, not knowing what to do or not being able to act. And one of the mistakes we talked about earlier is focusing her on that kind of day to day and trying to get her to do something to solve an issue now. But actually, the best way to do it is to work with Joanne to get her to think about, how does she want to come out of this? How does the business need to come out of it? What does she want to be perceived as, or what do they need to be perceived as in 6 months' time, a year's time, by their clients when they come through this, what they want to have happen? Because in a slightly counterintuitive way, certainty doesn't come from looking at now, it comes from knowing where you want to be in the future. And that allows you and her to say, okay, well, we need to work together to help you get there. And without having an end goal in mind, without working with the end in mind, it's very difficult to say, this is what we've got to do now. So being purposeful is very, very important, using these statements of intent and why you exist, but also making sure that there's a certainty piece here for her by pushing her horizon back to the question of, how do you want to come out of this, and then teaming up with her to help her go through that. The third piece here, and this is incredibly important, as are the others, but I'll talk quite a lot about this one, is the idea of being valuable. We talked a lot about helping clients. Now, before the crisis, when you look at the research from whether it's Rain Group or Gartner or Google or Statista or HubSpot, there is so much research into buyers and what they're prioritizing in terms of sales experience and what they need. The most important thing that's come out in the last 8 years, every single study, is not listening. It's not just about understanding needs. It's about one thing and one thing only. It's about teaching. The most important thing your clients need from the sales experience is to learn new ideas and perspectives. Now, learning new ideas and perspectives helps your clients because it helps them understand how to make tough decisions. They want to learn what to do, what not to do, what mistakes to avoid, how to overcome challenges, what results are going to come if they do things a certain way. They don't really want to learn about you guys. They want to learn about other people like them, and they want to learn about the end user. Because if they can learn about how the end user behaves and what works and what doesn't work for the end user, those of you in media and events, most people, but I'm aware there's a few people on here who aren't in media and events, the end user quite obviously is the audience. How does the audience behave? What works and what doesn't work for them in this tough time? That's so insightful because that gives them a reason why they should do stuff. But also sharing and being valuable and sharing perspectives around what's working, what's not working for other people like them and how to avoid mistakes has never been more important. So there's different ways that you can be valuable. Ultimately, the thing to have in mind, and it's a cracking catchphrase from the Challenger Sale. For those of you who haven't read it, download the audiobook right now. It's brilliant. It's by Gartner, was CEB. And one of the things they talk about is that every conversation needs to feel like it's worth paying for in itself. And again, because the impact of the sales experience is so exaggerated, that's never been more true than now. So making sure we're adding real value by teaching them how to make decisions, what works and what doesn't work, and how to navigate through this by finding out from other people what they're doing and sharing that is so important. So in terms of tips, guys, is a couple. Number one, when people don't know what to do, they look to other people and they find out what are they doing, what's working, what's not working, what mistakes are they making. So for you guys as salespeople, and because of this emotionally sensitive approach that clients have now got, because of everything they're going through, the book's called The Challenger Sale. Thanks, Daniel. They'll be looking at other people. What are they doing? So for salespeople, one of the biggest approaches you can use, one is using insights and research that you can get. And there's some great companies out there helping with this type of stuff, which I'll bring into some blogs and stuff in the next couple of days. But the other way is with stories. So using stories, and the difference with the stories here, the stories we're talking about you guys sharing are not stories about you. They're stories about other people like you. They're stories about what other people are learning, what's working, what's not working, the mistakes they're making. And we've got to make sure we're not the hero. It shouldn't be, and they came to us and this happened. It's just sharing best practice and what works and what doesn't, because the more they can learn that, the more they see you as a valuable resource, a resource that they can't do themselves. They can't go out and have these conversations that you guys are trying to or are having with their clients. So you can be invaluable and make every single conversation worth paying for itself if you tell stories around other people like them, what they're learning, what epiphanies other people are having, what they're realizing, and then allowing that client you're talking to act on those. So stories are key. And the second one, and I'm kind of saying this from experience, although I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but become a LinkedIn expert. Up until recently, I've not been all over LinkedIn at all. And changing times, we need to act in different ways. And my pledge and Flume's pledge is to try and help people as much as possible. So you might have seen me on LinkedIn with videos. We've last weekend set up a YouTube channel. We've set up a events and media group, Selling in the Crisis. And all of this stuff is there coming through social channels to try and help you guys in the industry as much as possible. And you might be thinking from your perspective, well, how do I translate that to help my clients? But one of the things here is you need to, and we have had to pull together more as a team than we've ever done before. And we've had to change our skill set. And for you guys working more with editorial or working more with conference producers, working more with marketing and thinking our goal is to help our clients navigate this stuff. What can we share? What can we learn? What can we put out there? And becoming a social champion for this stuff and getting people to follow you and commenting on people's opinions and joining groups, it's so important. And to be really, really candid with you guys and open, that's how this is happening today. This would never have happened if we hadn't shifted our approach to digital and sharing everything. So you can have the same impact as this with your clients if you pull together and make sure you know what you want to teach and how you're going to do it. But all of that came from the strategic one question at the very start, which is what is our purpose? And that allowed us to get all the way to where we are here. So we've got three main areas. Number one, be empathetic. Number two, be purposeful. Number three, be valuable. And hopefully there's some tips there that you guys can go away and put into practice straight away. So overall, we've talked about a lot of stuff here. We've talked about some of the common approaches, the passive and the aggressive approach, and how they don't help the client. We've looked at the client's world and thought about what they're going through and how they've gone into security mode rather than ego mode. And we've also had to think about the risk that's involved in their life right now and how for them they've become more emotionally sensitive than ever before, and how that has heightened the impact and the response to a strong sales experience or client relationship and a bad sales experience. And ultimately that comes from the fact that all they're looking for at the moment is an answer to that question, which is, how do we get through this? And they're looking for people who they can connect with, who can genuinely add value around that. So we need to shift our perspective from selling to helping clients get through this, because if we can help clients get through this and work with them with advice and ideas, then we're going to get through this as well. So there needs to be a shift in how they and we for some people, perceive the sales role. What that allowed us to do is to come up with 3 things on sales strategy, 3 things on sales behavior. So making sure you know your purpose, why you exist, probably going to be along the lines of helping your client come out the back of this. That allows you to think, where can I best help clients do that? And what can we innovate and create to allow them to do that? In terms of behaviors, be empathetic, state your purpose and be purposeful and assertive, and make sure you're adding as much value as possible, because ultimately you need to make it feel like that conversation or that interaction was worth paying for in itself. So we've actually flown through the content now, which I'm hoping is a good thing, because, well, number one, this is going to be on YouTube afterwards, not necessarily immediately, but pretty quickly. So it allows us more time in a minute to go to questions. But just before I do, I just want to share with you some other things we're doing to help, so that you guys know how to work with us and engage with us. And ultimately, we're in the same situation as you, and it's tough, you know, and we're learning as we go through. We don't know everything, but we're going to share everything we think is right and that we learn is right as we go through. So a couple of things to have on your radar. Number one is the next webinars. So I've mentioned it already, but I'm just going to blow this screen up for me because it's a bit small on my screen. So bear with me one sec while I just pause for a moment. So on Wednesday, over the next 2-3 weeks, so next Wednesday, the week after at 2 o'clock every single time, we're going to be running a webinar, and we're going to try and commit to doing that like throughout the whole of this. So we're going to not just cover the areas I'm about to talk about in a minute, which are next time, leading and driving remote sales teams, whole new challenges there. And what worked as a sales leader when you're in the office is very different. And there's a big piece there around driving intrinsic motivation and setting goals for your teams and working together and helping them innovate around client conversations. So that's a really big area. And the one after that, the Wednesday after, we're going to be looking at the pivot to selling digital. For those of you who are used to selling events, how do we sell digital and virtual? Now, they're completely free for all. And we've also got the LinkedIn group where we're feeding in tons of stuff. We've got some guest speakers and bloggers who are going to be helping us as well, which is great. And we've created a YouTube channel, which you can see there as well, which is worth logging into. Subscribe if you can, share if you can, and there's all free for access information. The other thing just to say before I go on to questions is, if the stuff I've talked about today in this free webinar is useful, then we've actually created 3 virtual training sessions, which we're going to make available to the public for a really nominal fee. So we've completely changed the way we're working as a business, from charging a day rate for a company, and we're looking at a very nominal fee per person to get involved in that. So it's very valuable, but also it means that it's very available to everyone because it won't cost much whatsoever. And we'll get more details out about that after this. So that concludes my bit in terms of the presentation. And I've got 41 questions in front of me. On the crowdcast I did this morning, where I was a guest member, we had 3 questions. So it puts into perspective how important these areas are. I haven't looked at these questions, and I've got to just preface this with the fact I might not be able to answer all of these. In fact, for a fact, I won't be able to answer all of these because I've only got half an hour.